Michael, was it all concerning for you to work with a first-time director? I mean, knowing though that John is an actor himself, did that provide you with an extra sort of safety net to know that you're going to be protected as an actor?
No, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of John as an actor. I mean, he worked on Eric's movie, but he was a film critic for a long time. So I know he had studied film and the end product. And I believed that he knew what he was looking for every day. Well, with every shot and every setup, actually.
Got it. The old axiom is write what you know. Okay, given that the shelter deals with issues such as infidelity, suicide, loss and redemption, I gotta ask, did you have any personal experiences you drew from when writing this screenplay, and also like what inspired the story from the get-go?
Oh, that's good. My mom's not in the audience. Well, in my 20s, I went through a really rough time, and it's not really about infidelities or my pregnant wife killing herself or anything like that, but more guilt and self-loathing and no sign of seeking redemption. And in my 30s, I started thinking about the shelter, and I wanted to revisit that because I thought it was compelling. So now I'm also Catholic, and my Catholic upbringing obviously has something to do with that, seeped into the film. So my Catholic upbringing and my relationship with it, plus the dark place I was in my 20s equals the shelter, I guess.
Well, I mean, you mentioned that you'd been thinking about it for a while, but ideas always come from unusual places. You touched on it a little bit, but where was that spark? Do you remember when you got that initial spark for the idea and how it spoke to you and why you wanted to approach the material like the way you approached the material?
Well, the initial spark was I was coming back from a hockey game, and there was a homeless man in the street, and he was begging for change. It was winter, and he was freezing. So I gave him some money, and when I was walking back home, I thought, who is this guy? How did he get there, and where is he going afterwards? So when I got home, I wrote those three things down, and that was the seed that started everything in terms of the Christianity based iconography in the film. I'm going to give this up right now. It's the big man upstairs that's putting his character through the ringer, giving him some tough love, hopefully with the hopes that he'll come out of it a winner. When I was writing The Shelter, I thought, every movie that's kind of like, a little bit like haunted housey, and it's always demons and the devil and demons and the devil. And anybody that's read the Old Testament can see that God could be fairly harsh if you go by the Old Testament. So I put that in there. Actually, a friend of mine called The Shelter the Book of Job gone wrong. So I could see that.
I mean, there's strains of Dante's Inferno too.
Yeah, I could see that too.
Yeah, Michael, it's talking about what he's talking about, where initially you're playing a very unsympathetic character when you think about it, but you manage to make us want to go along this journey with you and have sympathy for you. How do you prepare for something like that, or how do you, knowing that you're dealing with a character that could come across as, the audience might reject you, how do you prepare for that?
I always think it's a mistake when actors approach a role and are trying to safeguard themselves and want to be a likable character. This is a scary movie, and the idea of, I think everybody is essentially a good human being, and they are drawn by their weaknesses and their desires to do, very selfish things. And if I was hoping that everybody's going to like me all the time, maybe you don't have a movie. This is a very flawed human being, and I hate to say too much, but at one time, people thought that neuroses were demonic possession, You know, and that's really the basis of how I approach this.
Now, can you talk about the creation of the character, like, and of the story? Like, how much, when you first started writing it to now, how the script evolved over the course of time, and, you know, when you ultimately did cast Michael, what changes were then brought to the story?
Well, I wrote the screenplay with Michael in mind.
Oh.
He looked like Michael and I worked on Eric Red's film 100 Feet together, and we kind of, you know, became friends. And one thing that struck me about him is how charismatic and how much presence he has. So when I wrote The Shelter, I wrote it with him in mind. He looked like him because that's my process. I always have to find like somebody that the person looks like. Yeah. And I told my producer, Donnie Broussard, I'm like, okay, let's find a guy like Michael Paré. And he's got to look like Michael Paré. It's got to have that same vibe. And Donnie's like, dude, you know Michael Paré. Just send him the script. So I'm like, oh, Michael's busy, you know. He's like, yeah, just send him the script. So I sent Michael the script, and he reacted to it, and you know, that led to him being cast. With that said, nothing changed. What Mike brought, it was exactly, you know, I'm so happy that he did, is taking a character, because of his charisma and his presence, he took a character on the page that is incredibly unlikable, really, and you know, and I feel, not, of course, not everybody, but that you feel empathy for him because of the presence and the charisma that Mike brings to the thing.
Now, when you first read the script, obviously the first thing that jumps out to you is that you're essentially carrying this movie. I mean, for most part, you're the only one on screen. Is that daunting to you, or is that more an exciting challenge? Because I'm sure there is the fear of going too far or projecting, you know, to make sure the character is coming across when you're essentially by yourself, acting with the house.
You know, I didn't get into show business because I didn't have an ego.
I didn't want to make any assumptions.
You know, I got to tell you, you know, I've made a lot of movies. Yeah. You know, and when I saw this, and John being new and gambling everything on it, I thought this is an opportunity for me to just jump in with everything I have and gamble on every shot. You know, that scene with the teddy bear. Yeah. You know, that was the first day of shooting.
Well, you know? Really?
And I landed. They took me from the airport to the set. Yeah. You know, there was no getting acclimated or any of that other stuff. It was just like, you know, so I really had, you know, I read the script like 100 times. You know, it was like I had this whole plan. You know, it you know, hey, you know, it's a beautiful thing when it works. Yeah. You know, if it didn't work. You know, imagine if they had said terrible things about it and they said, what a waste of time. John would be, you know, waiting tables or doing whatever. You know, he'd be back to writing. You know, so we gambled big. Yeah. And it's a pretty nice film, you know. It held my attention. And I don't like to watch a movie for the first time with an audience because, you know, sometimes you're like this. But this was like, you know, some funny moments, you know.
Now, was that done purposely? I mean, did you want to sort of throw him essentially to the wolves at first and really, because that is
actually, that's a funny story because, you know, everybody always asks me, weren't you stressed out, you know, your first film as a director? No. What happened was we were flying Mike down and there was a snowstorm and he was stranded. And he gave me a call, John, you know, my flight's canceled. You got to give me another flight. So Donnie and I spent like 5, 6, 7, I don't remember how long, trying to rebook him because if he didn't get there the next day, I didn't have the money to push the shoot. So I was already growing a stubble. I'm like, well, if I can't get Mike there the next day, I guess I'm gonna play the lead. And thank God that didn't happen. So all that stress and anxiety that I could have felt on the first day of shooting was all milked out there. So by the time he showed up on set, which was hilarious because, as he said, the first scene he did was when he cries with the teddy bear. And literally showed up on set, right off the plane, ran up and did the crying scene. And I'll always remember everybody's face was like this. So they're like, okay, this is a real movie. This guy just brought his AAA A game, so we're all gonna bring our AAA A game, and they did.
That's great. Now, did you always know that you were going to be directing the film?
Yeah.
Okay, so it did. So okay, because it's interesting. Like as a writer, the way you approach the material, knowing that you're going to direct it, is it different from, say, when you're writing a screenplay that you know that's going to be in somebody else's hands?
The Shelter is just a weird thing. Period. It's I keep saying it. It's the film that wanted to get made because on paper it made no sense. Here I am putting all my life savings, not on a slasher movie, something that's commercial, something that's gonna sell. Here I am writing a character that's a complete son of a bitch. So he's your lead, and he's in like 97% of the frames of the movie. It made no sense, but it was one of those things. It's really hard to verbalize it. It was just, I didn't care. It just needed to get done, and no matter the cost, and there was no way anybody would read that script and say, yeah, I want to direct that. There's no freaking way. That was me. It's so personal, it's so me that it never even crossed my mind that, I'm going to try to sell it.
So can you talk about your writing process a little bit? Like when
Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels. Well, I mean, like, how long does it take you to get your first draft, and is it writing is in the rewriting for you?
I mean, is everybody in a hurry? Because I got a good story. So just
Let's
all right. The Shelter was the weirdest script I've ever written. Most scripts that I've written have taken me about 3 months. The Shelter, I had the opening, and I had the ending, bang, and I had nothing in between. And God, I'm gonna try to make this long story short. I was living downtown on a 4th floor, and I had a flood. A pipe broke, and I had a flood. So I told my landlord, I have a flood, can you send a plumber? So he said, okay, we'll send a plumber. So the next day, this little Asian man dressed up as a plumber showed up, and he went and fixed my pipes. And I was sitting on my computer in the, it was kind of like a 3.5 type of thing. Sitting on my computer researching Christian sites, just trying to find ideas, something that will spark for me to find where the story is going to go. And at some point I feel a presence behind me, and it's the plumber. So he's like, oh, you Christian? I'm like, well, yeah, but this is for a script and blah, blah, blah. So he takes a pen and he writes down these 3 websites. He goes, visit these sites. I'm like, okay, cool. So thank you, Mr. Plumber. So he books out, and these sites were like some of these like underground type of sites, not something you'll find on Google. It's really like obscure shit. So anyways, and through that, I did find the trigger that got me, after 3 years of trying to find the rest of the script, I found it. So I was happy, really happy. I even called my friend, dude, I found it. So the next day I wake up, and there's water in my apartment again. I'm like, damn it. So I go downstairs, tell my landlord, I'm like, listen, man, that plumber you sent yesterday, messed up. There's water all over the place. And my landlord's like, well, we didn't send a plumber. He's coming on Thursday. So I'm like, dude, there was some Asian guy dressed like a plumber in my house. He's like, looks through the papers. No, I'm like, call the company. He's like, what? I'm like, just call the company. So calls the company, did you guys send a plumber, blah, blah, blah. No, they didn't send a plumber. So to this day, I have no idea who that plumber Asian dude was, but as I keep saying, as a joke, you should get a co-writing credit. Thank you, whoever you are. So so that was the weirdest writing process I've ever had. Yes.
That is definitely bizarre.
Do you have Asian distribution yet?
No, time to call the plumber.
I'll bet you anything that is going to do really well there.
Especially Japan.
Michael, can you talk about any scenes that were particularly challenging for you on the shoot? I guess beyond maybe the scene with the stuffed bear, but were there other scenes that were maybe a little bit more challenging than others that you would like to talk about?
We were shooting fast. That was the challenge, because we had to go from moment to moment, and without, a lot of time, if you have a long schedule, you get to indulge yourself, and in my opinion, a lot of time actors are just napping or snacking, and they're getting, I need time to prepare, and they go in their dressing room and they come back an hour later, and it's, it was fun. Every moment was fun. You know, there was nobody throwing a fit. There was nobody complaining. You know, the weather was nice in Abbeville.
Abbeville in Lafayette.
Abbeville was a real pretty place. I didn't get to eat much. We ate out maybe 2 or 3 times, mostly catfish, and in one place before we left. But Bobby Holbrook, he made his gumbo, sausage and chicken gumbo. And you know, if you haven't had real gumbo, it's really a treat, because making that roux, that is an art. And making a dark roux. Yeah. And Bobby shows up and it's just like, wow, this is real Cajun. You know, so no, it wasn't hard. It was long out. You know, it's like a regular movie, long hours, and demanding, and you have to be prepared. And there was nothing to do. I mean, the town was pretty depressed, but you could see it in its heyday. It was this beautiful southern town.
Now, what was the decision to shoot there?
It was basically through Donnie, my producer. Mm-hmm. He found the house. It started with the house. Okay. And I wanted, you know, every movie of this genre has, you know, a decrepit house or an old house. So being that I'm exploring the flip side of the coin, I figured I want a nice house. I want something modern. Of course, the way, you know, that we orchestrated, like the furniture, and I wanted it to be a bit like timeless. So, you know, the phone, I wanted a phone from the 70s, and the record player, and so that it started with the house. And once I fell in love with the house, then Donnie put me together with the Holbrooks, and then I flew down and I met Bobby, and who was my DP, obviously, and we got along, and you know, it just clicked. Everything just clicked, and I realized as a producer that I could make this movie with all my life savings and blah blah blah, but I could pull it off there. I can't do it here at home, but I could do it there, so that's why I shot it there.
You know, speaking of being a producer, so, you know, on this, you know, like I said before, writer, director, and producer. Now, these are obviously very different disciplines. Were there any times where they were at odds with each other, where you're wearing your producer hat, looking at the bottom line of the budget, and realizing, okay, I'm going to have to make some creative choices based on, you know, either the budget or schedule? Did that happen at any point where your producer you looked at the director you and said, hey?
No, the director me kicked the butt of the producer me, and you know, yeah, no, because the movie was the most important thing in my life, and the producer me could kiss my butt when he came with budget. Oh, we're going to go over budget? We'll go over budget. I really didn't. I mean, it's not good producing people, but I didn't care. Yeah. You know, I really didn't care. So I had to go for it. That was it.
Good. You know, we sort of were talking briefly outside about, you know, sort of people in this industry can tend to pigeonhole themselves. And as I mentioned before, you've worn a lot of hats. You even run a very successful horror website. Out of all the things you do, is there one that sort of satisfies, you know, your creative juices the most, like the ones that you really like, you know, you're always in the zone, or it's just something that just is very satisfying for you to do in all these different disciplines that you do?
Well, definitely directing The Shelter is, you know, in the top 5, you know, most fulfilling and exciting things in my life. Directing a feature was a dream. Actually, I don't like the word dream. It was a goal that I've had for years and years and years. And you know, I came close with that one, but somebody wound up directing it. I came close with that one. And when I wrote The Shelter, I'm like, nobody's touching this, because nobody will. Nobody will want to, anyways. Nobody's touching this. This is mine. So directing was incredibly fulfilling. So I definitely want to continue and pursue that. And screenwriting is great too, because screenwriting is pure. Yeah. Unless, you know, you're hired to write a script. When you write on spec, it's you and the story, and you're playing God. You know, you're creating, and there's none of the BS that comes so often with the film industry. You know, so I still love screenwriting when I have the time. Yeah.
Okay, just a few more questions before we wrap it up. You know, the use of music and silence in the movie, because silence can be very important. It can be deafening at times. Can you talk about that? Because, you know, there's some very specific song choices in the film, but your use of silence. Can you sort of talk about that? How you approached the music, the score, the music, and the the lack thereof, at times.
Well, in post, Well, I knew right away that the sound design on the film would be very important. You know, there's a lot of Michael Paré, you know, saying hello, 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 anybody home, hello. So and a lot of Mike by himself. So I knew I had to create my environment or my threat through sound. So for example, at a certain point, Michael Paré, I like how I call you Michael Paré. Mike is going up the stairs. He's rushing up the stairs with the gun, like the second time he does it. And you hear, and that's actually a prayer that Catholic priests use to exorcise demons. So I had, you know, my composer do that, and, you know, I just jacked it up. So all that to say, we spent, Colby Huval and myself, he was my sound mixer, we spent a lot of time working on the sound, and Sean Knippelberg, who's my composer, yeah, we spent a lot of time on the music trying to get it right. Even though, you know, he was in one country, I was on another, doing it on Skype, and which was not ideal. But I think, you know, the end result is satisfactory.
Now you said that the movie in essence did not really change much, you know, when Michael was casted, but your relationship with each other, was there any improv stuff being done on set? Is that something that you're fine with? I mean, is that something that you wanted to bring to it, where you might have seen felt something that could really add to the film?
There wasn't much added dialogue. Ain't nobody here but us chickens. Was up, and I slipped in. It just seemed like I didn't want to be too happy, but it was like, you know, full refrigerator, bottle of booze, and a roast chicken. That's great, man. It was pretty much all on the page.
On the page.
I just want to say one improv that was not in the script was the house. When I first visited the house, like really, I picked the right house. You know, once I flew to Louisiana, I walk in the house, and it's like statues, crucifix, busts of Christ, everywhere, like everywhere. So I had them empty out everything, but I don't know if you guys remembered, you know, I do push-ins on that bust of Jesus Christ. That one just struck me. I'm like, I like that. I like this, and it's a way for me to point to the audience as to the presence that's here, you know, and that was my way to try to hint it, you know, to the audience. So I said, well, let's keep that guy in. And there's a couple in the background that we kept in too, but it was really, I had never seen a house filled with so much Christian iconography in my life.
It was a sign, right?
Oh yeah, was it ever? So
I just want to finish up with, can you talk about what do we have coming up next for you, Michael, and where can we see you?
I've done a few things since we shot this. We shot this, what, like a year and a half ago?
2014, January.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
Living with it for 2
years. I've done a
years.
bunch of stuff since then, and I just came back from Calgary. I did a environmental, you know, catastrophe movie for the Sci-Fi Channel, and you know, I got this family thing that'll be, well, it's a family movie called Doggone Christmas, you know. Yeah, and then we're gonna do a doggone hit mystery, you know, in January. You know, the family movies horror. I'm jumping around from genres. I got a great one coming up with Brad Furman again. You know, I did a Western that is in Walmart now. It also got very nice reviews.
Great.
So, you know, I've been busy. Very grateful to be employed in the entertainment industry, sir.
Excellent. And John, yourself? What do we look forward to?
Well, the last 2 years of my life has been The Shelter, really, nonstop. I couldn't even write anymore. I had no inspiration. I couldn't write. So I hired writers and would commission scripts. I finally actually did manage to get one out. So right now I'm pushing 3 projects. One is called The Prize, which is The Grey meets Conan the Barbarian. So it's a action-driven film with a twist. The other one is, and that's like, you know, a higher budget range. Then I felt that I needed something, you know, on the $300,000, $500,000 budget range, because it's a popular production model. So I wrote a female vigilante film called Eva, which is my first girl power film. So that was actually challenging, you know, because you're doing a film about, you know, a prostitute that that almost dies and then comes back and kills all the scumbags, and you got to find the balance between exploitation and not treating your lead girl as candy. So I pulled it off, by the way, so I'm very happy with it. And I also have another script called The Shadowing, which is an action sci-fi, which is also doing the rounds within like local production companies, a bit like The Predator, the Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Excellent. All right. Well, I wanted to thank you. Oh, Michael.
Why is all the prostitutes customers scumbags?
No, they're not customers. You see, Michael. This girl was kidnapped as a young age, then drugged, then put in a sex trade. But something happens, and she's freed, and she locks in loads and blows those motherfuckers away.
She's very young. This is a child prostitute.
Yeah, she's 16 when she
Oh,
gets
you didn't say
kidnapped.
that.
Well, I didn't know I had to say that much.
So get ready, Michael. That's going to be your most challenging role yet.
I think I'm too old for that.
All right. Well, once again, I want to thank you both for coming. And
Thank you.
What a great show. Another round of applause for the writer.
Thank you,
and
guys.
star. Thank you very much.